Hello and welcome to another edition of Chiodini's Kitchen, video game recipes made real. Now this week's recipe comes to us from a game that's obsessed with finding and making food, and being torn apart by hideous monsters. This week we're making monster lasagna from Don't Starve. Right, so in Don't Starve there are lots of different ways you can make a monster lasagna. Some of them involve twigs, some of them have a 50-50% chance of turning into eggs and bacon. Roguelikes are pretty weird. Anyway, one of the easiest ways to do it is by combining at least two monster foods, and that can include cooked monster meat. You can throw durians in there, but the problem is durians are a pretty divisive ingredient, and I don't really want anyone to follow this recipe and then throw up all over their kitchen. That would make me feel pretty bad. So what we're going to do is we're going to play it safe and make a monster lasagna with two different kinds of cooked monster meat. So with that in mind, for this recipe you will need 1 onion, 3 cloves of garlic, 500 grams of beef mince, a packet or 2 of beef jerky, no really, 2 tins of chopped tomatoes, a couple of beef stock cubes or a teaspoon of Marmite if you're in a pinch, a small glass of red wine, that's optional, a good chunk of cheese, 2 pints of milk to be on the safe side, 50 grams of butter, a few tablespoons of plain flour, and some lasagna sheets. Now, Aoife told me I wasn't allowed to make this recipe unless I made my own pasta, but to be honest, I'm a bit pushed for time this week, so I'm using pre-made, and I'm just going to have to face her wrath. Step 1 is to take our onions and garlic and cut them up nice and small before sweating them gently in a pan with some olive oil. And because Don't Starve is a game that's all about surviving horrible dangers, I'm going to be making this monster lasagna while wearing a white t-shirt. Terrifying. So we're just going to cook those onions until they start to become translucent, at which point we'll add the beef and cook it until it's brown all over. So once your meat's got to about this stage, you want to start adding in a couple of beef stock cubes, or you can use a teaspoon of Marmite. If you don't have any stock cubes, it will brown the mince up just the same. At this point, I also like to add a small glass of red wine and then reduce the heat so that the beef can really soak in all that flavour. Now, of course, there are lots of different schools of thought as to how you should make this particular meat ragu sauce. That's just how I like to do it. I'm sure someone in the comments will be calling me a bad Italian, but you know, hey, I put garlic in, I put red wine in, and that's what I'm going to do right now. 1 stock cube, 2 stock cubes, salt, pepper, red wine. So yeah, we've just stirred that through and I turned the heat right down under it, and I'm going to leave that now to simmer until the liquid is reduced down to practically nothing, at which point we're going to introduce the 2 cans of tomatoes and simmer down the rest of our sauce. And of course, you know you're onto a winner when the smell of your cooking food attracts the dog. Sit. Pour. No. Pour. Nearly. Pour. Pour. Good girl. Okay. Tomatoes time. 1. 2. At this point you can also add any spices you like some basil or some oregano. I'm going to add some oregano in because I quite like it, and I'm sure that any Americans watching will be having a ball at the way I say oregano. So it may not look like much right now, but given enough time to simmer down, that should be a pretty tasty sauce. Of course, it's not the only sauce going into this lasagna, so now we need to start making the white sauce. Step 1, take about 50 grams of butter and melt it gently in a pan. This is an interesting new camera angle. So once our butter's got to about this state, we are going to get some plain flour and add in probably about that much. I'm sorry I don't have an exact measurement. I always just do this by eye, but we'll call that, let's say 50 grams for the sake of argument. Have I overdone it? I might have overdone it. Nah, we'll get away with that. So then you want to start sort of mixing it together to form sort of buttery, floury paste. So it's nicely combined. Then you want to get your milk handy. Now I find the trick is with white sauce, just to add your milk very gradually and just keep stirring it, nice small movements, so the milk incorporates into the paste and you start to build it up into a nice thick sauce that's not too lumpy. It can take some getting used to this. It took me quite a while to get my white sauce to a state in which I was even remotely happy, and to be honest, it can still be a bit hit and miss, but generally speaking, if you add your milk gradually, you keep stirring it and you just be patient and make sure you're not heating it too strongly, and you'll eventually be rewarded with something thick and smooth and white. Oh God. And tasty. Let's just hope that doesn't happen again. There it goes. See, it's starting to get smooth-ish. How's that for double spatula action? One thing I forgot to mention, a couple of things I forgot to mention actually, into my white sauce I tend to enjoy throwing a bay leaf and a good twist of pepper. Right, so I've added all the milk I'm likely to add to my white sauce. It's looking a bit thin at the minute, but I'm just going to keep simmering it until it thickens up to the desired consistency. I added probably about 1.5 pints of milk, and our meat sauce is continuing to bubble down quite nicely here, so it's just a matter of simmering until we are ready to put the lasagna together. Ordinarily, because there's a weight involved in this bit, I'd suggest you go outside or go exploring or do something related to the game in question, but this week, don't do that. You'll burn your sauces and or your house down. Just to show you, the meat sauce is still simmering down, but the white sauce has just reached the consistency I would like, so I've taken it off the heat and it's going to rest until it's time to assemble this thing. So this is about the consistency we want our meat sauce to be, so it's sort of nice and thick, not too much liquid there, because of course the white sauce is in itself a liquid, and you don't want a watery lasagna, because a watery lasagna, even in a monstrous one, is too horrible to contemplate. Alright, so assembly time. We're going to grab ourselves one of these glass dishes. Just going to put the camera down here, and we're going to start layering it up. So, let's see. Going to take our meat sauce here, and using a ladle, we're going to put about half of it into our dish. Just use the back of the ladle to really spread it into the corners. Then we're going to take the bay leaf out of our white sauce, and then we're just going to gently pour about 1/3 of this over the meat. Whoopsie. And just, with the spatula, you can see it's kind of uneven right now. We're just going to try and gently, ever so gently, spread this over the top without completely combining the layers, because what you want to see is a nice cross section when you cut into your lasagna. Although, to be honest, I rarely get that bit right. Now it's time for pasta sheets, whether you're using dried ones like me and thereby incurring the wrath of your colleagues, or just using fresh. You want to start layering these up. Now, if your casserole dish is anything like mine, it'll actually have rounded edges, which is really annoying because it means that these rectangular sheets don't go flush. So what I tend to do is just a bit of creative breaking to sort of form pieces I can insert there to just firm up the layers basically and make sure that everything is covered. Okay, that's our first layer. So now onto that we just put the rest of our meat. Another layer of white sauce. And a second layer of pasta. Using our spatula, we want to just scrape the last of the white sauce, spread it thin, and then just top with grated cheese. Alright, so that's how it's now looking, but to be honest, it doesn't look overly monstrous. And you'll remember at the very top of this episode, I did say we were going to use 2 different types of cooked monster meat. So, in order to give it that classic don't starve, I'm not sure I want to eat this aesthetic, I'm going to throw some beef jerky on there. Not something I'd normally do, but hey, it is a monster lasagna. There you go, that looks much better. Which is to say, worse. Now, ordinarily when I make a lasagna, I like to let it rest a little while for about, maybe 10 minutes or so the pasta sheets inside can soften up a bit before it goes in the oven, just to make sure that it will be all cooked all the way through when the cheese is nice and brown on top. And you want to take it out of the oven, so I'm going to leave that for a little bit and then slam it in the oven at 180 degrees centigrade, which is gas mark 4, for about 20 to 30 minutes, I think. And while your lasagna is resting, you could always make sure you've got enough firewood to last you through the night. Or, like me, you're just going to chance it, because you're going to do the washing up now and eat the rest of the beef jerky. Alright, there goes the oven, there goes the lasagna. See you in 20 to 30 minutes. Okay, so it's actually been more like 35 minutes, but it's now time to get the lasagna out the oven, which is a two-handed job. Yeah, come on, out you come. Oi. That is a pretty decent looking lasagna, if you ask me. Obviously, the jerky on top is a weird touch, but then that's what makes it a don't starve monster lasagna. So all we need to do now is leave it to cool for a minute or two so I don't burn my tongue off, then see how it tastes. Alright, so I've got, frankly, quite a large spoon here of Don't Starve's Monster Lasagna. How does it taste? Let's find out. I really hope this doesn't burn my tongue. Right. I really didn't think that beef jerky was going to work on top of a lasagna, but it actually adds quite a nice texture to it. Like ordinarily, like, you know, with lasagna you've got the creaminess of the sauce and you've got the smoothness of the meat sauce. I think I've burnt my tongue. And then you've got the slight bite of the pasta, but apart from that, I've actually got loads of melted cheese on there. It's not really like, you don't get a chewy element to it, but the beef jerky really adds quite a bit of bite to the dish, which is not unpleasant. The flavour is inoffensive. It's just, you know, it's actually, to be honest, completely overpowered by everything else. Beef jerky on lasagna. Who knew? It actually kind of works. Would I get anyone to try and do that off their own back? I mean, probably not. I don't think anyone's going to be easily convinced to just throw a load of dried beef on top of a beef lasagna, but as a one-off, that's pretty decent. So there we go, that'll about do it for another edition of Chiodini's Kitchen. Thank you so very much for watching and for all of your recommendations thus far. Do keep them coming in because it means we get to cook things like the monster lasagna from Don't Starve. I do have a couple of other recipes in mind from this game actually, really hoping to revisit that very, very soon. But in the meantime, tell me if there's another game you want me to visit, just let me know. And hopefully you enjoyed this video. If you did, there are plenty more from Eurogamer on the screen now, framing my face beautifully. Do like and subscribe if you enjoyed it. If not, no pressure. Either way, thank you for watching and have a lovely day.